Okay, well, we'll call this meeting to order, Agenda Priorities Meeting for April the 17th, and I will ask Councillor Dunham to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for their traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. And we'll go on to 2.1. Are there any additions or deletions? No. Can I please have someone make a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Okay, and we will move on to number 3.1, the Aquatic Centre project.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Hello, Council. So Council's had the opportunity to review the validation report for 2 weeks now. Hopefully it's given you enough time just to digest it, go into it a little bit and understand what it's stating to you. Council, in advance of the meeting, Council was asked to consider submitting to administration questions that are dear to you individually to assist in dialogue with Council today. Some of you took the opportunity to submit questions, which administration took a look at those questions and conducted necessary research and is prepared to talk and share that information with you. So the intent today is really to touch point on some of those questions, lead into any further questions and responses, really get Council talking, how you wish to proceed. And we'll get into some of the, likely fall into the financial pieces to this project, which is obviously part of your questions too. So really it's all in, just a really low key, just conversation amongst Council. But I think maybe a good place to start Council would be just going into the questions and just see where that generates. But in fairness to you, if you could speak to your question, we'd certainly respond to the answers as per your voice. I think it's important to your question. And we'll see if we can answer your questions. And some that we don't, we'll certainly take those away. But we're quite confident we have some good responses for you. So I'll put it to you, Council, on any questions you wish to pose as per your email and anything that comes out per your conversation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So who would like to begin with questions that were submitted? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. And not so much a question, but more of a comment. I responded in the email about, and I'll just reiterate that, the planning team, I feel, has done a great job on putting together the final draft report. We've spent a lot of time in public consultations, chatter around this table here, and we've been at it a while, and I have great confidence. We gave the marching orders to the planning team to, this is what we were looking for, here's your budget, this is what we would like to see, and I think they've come back. I'm certainly not a technical expert on that 128 pages. That's where I put my confidence in the planning team and the guys that actually do this for a living. My biggest question is, how are we going to finance this? And I think, it's so fundamental to me is, the decision tree is yes or no. Yes, we want this, or no, we don't. And if it's yes, we go down this side of the decision tree. This is what we need to do. Have we captured everything in the report? Yes or no? If it's yes, then we get into the finances. Because we can have the greatest plan in the world. If we don't find the money or have the money to do it, we need a communication plan with our constituents and a way to go forth on our old aquatic center. So I didn't come up with specific questions around the report, CAO Becker. It was more, the general question is, at the end of the day, how are we going to finance this monster? So that would be my comments, and I'm really looking forward to see what some of the technical questions are from the council members. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I agree with my colleague, Councillor Harrison, in terms of the preliminary work that's been done. I think that there are a couple of important things that came up the last time we were talking about it, and one of the problems that we've all acknowledged is the parking, and that I think still needs to be looked at. I'm interested in pursuing the energy efficiency options that they've laid out for us. One of the things that I appreciate about what they've done in the design is that they have included a number of areas that incorporate some kind of flexibility for us to make decisions. I was curious, I don't know if this is any of our business or if there's information out there anywhere, but where did Drayton Valley go to get their funding? Is there anything that we can learn from them? And I'm with Councillor Harrison. The biggest question that I have is, where do we go to find financing?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, it's kind of repetitive, but I even reflect back to when this was first brought to us. Parking, I could see definitely needs some tweaking, and reflect on some of the parking that has been there already in big events, because they've used in the past, right on the gravel, they've used the area that is designated. And of course, it didn't have the loss of the footprint, and it didn't have any aquatic parking needed. And then the other thing was the financing.
Anybody else? Councillor Wing.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, I mean, certainly everything that has been said certainly has come to my mind as well. And I don't think that having this conversation is a reflection of dissatisfaction with the process at all. I mean, we were solidly on board with all of that process, but I think that there are questions, and I think that there's still some discussion to happen. So I am curious, and I did ask for some more data relative to users of the Aquatic Center. Like, do we have any idea as to how many customers we actually see, not repeat swimmers, but unique customers that are coming? And I do hear, relative to the pool and our Aquatic Center, that people are concerned that there's not an awful lot of public access, especially the pool in the summer, for example, because of the dolphins. And fair enough, we have a great swim program. But public access to facilities when we want to spend this much money is going to be really important. I also had asked, with putting the pool where it's proposed on the south side of the arena, are we limiting ourselves? Would there be potential to be able to add 2 lanes in the future, supposing that the user numbers go up and we move forward into the future with the entire recreation campus idea? I am concerned, though, and this is, as I'd said in my comments or in writing, my professional opinion only, but it's not just about grants and it's not just about debt, but I think we're really far behind the ball on fund development and fundraising, and I think it's time now that we make a decision around what that model is going to look like, how much we're going to try to raise, get a professional opinion as far as what that needs to look like. And then start to get that work moving forward, because that would certainly give me a lot more comfort to know we actually had a plan relative to raising the money, as opposed to just saying, well, it'll happen maybe. And then just finally, and I might get beaten up for this one, taken out back, but I certainly support the idea that we need to do something about our Aquatic Center. I absolutely do, but I wonder if, because this is such a project of such magnitude that potentially could take a long time, if we're not missing other opportunities for other amenities in the community that we're hearing from people that they would really like. So do we have like a recreation master plan that considers that entire site, that might consider a facility with a walking track and a soccer field in it? And I would really like to have that conversation as well. Are there some public-private partnerships we could explore to get any of this work done? Yeah, so that's essentially my concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. At the last meeting that we attended, when we decided that we wanted to further the discussion on this, I had brought up a point, and it for me, it's the feedback that I've received from the community in relation to what they have seen and what their original wish was, what the previous council and the previous iteration of what a multiplex was going to look like in the community. There were things like a gym, you know, that more multiplex idea, and I know that we found out very quickly that with the escalation in pricing, construction costs, supply chain issues, that it was cost prohibitive to go down that path. However, I think we need to be able to speak to the community about why those things aren't included in this. As far as, you know, the discussion of the final design or getting close to that final design or the money, it's what came first, the horse or the cart. You know, you need the money to build it, but you need to have that design to be able to know exactly how much, and we're getting to that point. However, one of the things that I do remember in the early discussions was the option that if we get to the point in that design where we've agreed upon it and we feel it's what's best for the community, that we can defer or shelve it for a while until construction costs become better under control or something changes. I mean, I don't think anybody out there in this community or any other community is naive about how the cost of everything in our lives has increased, being food, construction, fuel, anything like that. So I'm here, obviously, to sit and for us to discuss opportunities for funding. One of the things that I learned last week while attending the EDA conference in Kananaskis is how there is now different communities that are actually raising capital in alternative ways, where they actually go to the public, they go to their community to try and raise funding. So there's several different things that I can't share today because I don't have access to those finite details of the gentleman that did the presentation, but I will be bringing those forward at some point because maybe there's other opportunities for us to look at. Just different funding models, as Councillor Wing had mentioned, that's an important part. But I think today, you know, we'll hear your answers to the questions that were submitted, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. And, you know, just to, I guess, a reminder of where we've come with this. We started last term with HCMA, did a lot of work around that. We actually started before that with RC Strategies, who did a kind of an overall review of what's in the community as far as facilities go, and that led us into HCMA. We looked at renovating the existing pool, enlarging the footprint. I think at the cost of that time, we kind of thought, well, let's take a look at multiplex, or have that thought process anyway. The first plan that came back was $65 million. That was prior to the inflationary period that we've been to, and we knew then that there was no way. The plan that they ultimately came back with was separate buildings, which kind of defeated the whole purpose. So we kept paring down till we got to this council, where now we kind of, the whole thing with before was really because of the aquatic center and the aging facility and the issues that we're having there, and we know we need to do something. So the focus became the aquatic center, and where do we want that aquatic center to be? And it was, you know, even with HCMA, that aquatic center was to be down at the arena. So I think we're at a point where, you know, we have a design. I mean, that could be changed somewhat. I can tell you a track, I believe we were told by HCMA, a track in a facility that was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, was $5 to $6 million. I don't know what it would be today, but so it just comes down to what can we manage, and you know, it just becomes cost prohibitive. So I think if we decide, you know, I like what Councillor Harrison said, we have to decide we're either going to do this or we're not. And if we decide we're going to do it, then I think a lot of other things come into play at that point in time, and you know, a lot of the other work begins. But, you know, we can't do B, C, D, E, and F, and G without knowing that we're going to do this, because we're just kind of going around in circles. So I would like to hear from administration and talk about the funding possibilities, and see where we go from there and what your ideas are.
So put it over to Director of Operations. Thanks, Council, for your feedback, and we'll circle back into your questions. And of course, if we miss anything, please just fire away. But Councillor Bates?
Yeah, I had one more. Listening to the mayor, one of the things that I also mentioned before, and I didn't put it in my questions, was I think what drove us to the Aquatic Center, and to a great degree, was the limited projected lifespan on the current one. So we need to look at that specifically.
Director Kennedy?
All right. Yeah, so thanks again, Council, for providing some of that preamble to these as well. So I was able to try and get some of those listed down here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll start with some of those first before we get into the funding. So one of the questions was in regards to the IPD process, and maybe just a little refresher on, okay, we got into this IPD process. So what's our contractual obligations? So part of the validation agreement is we have a 3-year obligation commitment from that team. So we have 36 months from September of 2022, when that was signed, that we have this team in place. So really that gives us a solid 3 years, 2.5 years now of a team. So that's one. Another question that was asked is in regards to revalidation costs and really what triggers that. So in the report, it did talk about that, anticipating a pause. If there isn't a pause by, the date was October, so if we had this, like, boom, we can go, no revalidation cost. After that, it starts to depend on how long was how long was the pause, what things have changed. It's a really hard target to say it's going to cost X dollars. All we can do is say, well, in Drayton Valley, they paused. They paused for a year and a half, and they had a 4 to 6 week revalidation. Produced them a new report, and really it was just fine tuning all the stuff. What's changed? Is there code changes? What's the new cost estimates going to happen, because the confidence was there in the design. So about a 4 to 6 week period. So, but cost, I can't really comment on the cost. There was a comment in regards to project life. So the current project life, I think that was referring in regards to the commitment. So again, that's the 36 months. Really, this report, I would say strongly that this is good for 3 years. Like if we want to say, yes, let's go, to me, that's our target. We should have, after 3 years, we need to reevaluate what are we doing. If the decision is to, yes, let's go. There was some questions in regards to costs and how they work with the IPD contract. When we had Ken come and chat with us at the very beginning of this whole process, he had some slides in regards to IPD and, some different examples of, if for one, we used the one example where it was, okay, the project went perfect. There was no overages. We came within budget at the end, allowable, and it was the contractors, they got paid out their profit. Town paid their costs. Everybody was really happy. And then there's the second one where the costs started increasing. They went higher than budgets. Now, does the owner pay that difference? To a point, it's no. The team absorbs that extra, so their profit disappears. So that's kind of that second example. Third example is what if the project saves a bunch of money? So we go to detailed design, and we can save $1 million. How does that get distributed within the contract? So there's two things in the contract that's, if it's found during design, it's a 75-25 split. The town or the owner keeps 75% of that. 25% goes to the team, and they distribute it within their profits and percentages. Now, the caveat to that, in talking with the team, is typically, there's always a wish list, which within our report, we've got a big wish list of things that we want to add. So the chances in their experience is you don't ever have that savings. It's, okay, we've got $500,000, well then let's do this. And goes right back into the project. And let's just keep it up there. If it's $28 million, then we're gonna spend $28 million. We'll save as much as we can save, and we just keep going back in there, so. And becomes a negotiation process through that. So, but, you know, if we want to save $1 million, that's how that would be distributed, 75-25. If it's found during construction, and we decide, yeah, we're only gonna spend $27 million, then it's a 50-50 split. $500,000 goes to the team, they distribute it out, because they did the effort, they worked hard, they found that money to save the town. So the town saves $500,000, they distribute out to $500,000. Lastly is, yeah, what if it comes in at $30 million? So well over the price. It eats up all their profit, so they get no profit. And the construction cost is covered by the town, by the owner. But the team gets no profit out of that resolve. So that's kind of that last resort. And that's the incentive really with the IPD is, of course, they want profit. So they don't ever want to go to that point where the costs are over going into their profit, right? So that's kind of the 4 examples. I hope that helps explain that cost sharing and distribution of cost a bit more. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have one for Director Kennedy. Can you speak to the Drayton Valley model? What scenario did they get into when they were, like?
I believe they're in the budget of what they had. And they used their wish list up. So then they ended up just adding more items into it.
And that's sort of what the team sees as
Well,
more
it goes,
common than not, right?
yeah, definitely. That's from experiences that I've gotten from Ken and from Chanos. It's usually not a savings. They max it out. Like, we want to utilize everything that we can to make this project what everybody expected. And we add those wish lists in if we can, type of thing. There's a question in regards to Drayton Valley funding. In regards to Drayton Valley, so my understanding was they had $5 million, the county had $5 million right off the bat. So they had $10 million to start with. They needed to raise, I think they ended up raising $8 million, or they got a grant from the province for $8 million. As soon as they got the grant, it was go. Project's a go. And that's really was their trigger, is it was on hold until we get this provincial grant, and now it's a go. So they pretty much went from there, and they said, okay, now we still have fundraising to do, but the project's a go. Nothing stopped once that provincial funding got put in place.
Director Kennedy, was it provincial or a federal grant at the time?
Was it a mix? I think
It was the ISIP grant, so
Okay.
it's basically 30-30-30,
Yeah.
federal, provincial, and then there's like a matching.
And is that
component
still
comes-
available?
It's not. The current round of ISIP funding has all been allocated.
Okay.
And I believe it's 2 years before another agreement is required
Okay.
or will come out between the feds. In the provincial budget, there was no
Yeah.
no allocation in those in the next 2 years
Okay.
for that funding pot. And that one had both categories for energy efficiency, green buildings, as well as sort of recreation, culture, and facilities. I'm not sure which stream Drayton Valley was approved under. I would assume it was the green buildings because their original proposal, the swimming pool was going to be run on geothermal. It was going to be in some sort of cogeneration situation with their arena. None of that ended up coming to fruition as they went through their feasibilities and various things. So really, in terms of the end product in Drayton Valley, they have solar panels.
Yeah,
They,
it's net ready.
yeah,
Okay.
there's a pad outside for a cogen facility if they do that, but
there's really nothing super fancy on that front, but the way they explain it, that was how they got their paper at the top of the pile for that.
Okay. Do you see anything, Director Kennedy, or did your team comment on anything going forward on building code changes?
So.
And is that a risk?
It is a risk, and it's identified in the validation report as a risk. They've tried to anticipate what the changes are gonna be and is in the design. So they've done their best to go, we think it's this, we think it's this, and that's part of that. But there's no guarantees, because my understanding from them is until it's out there, it can be anything. Like, they think it's this, but until it's actually written in a document, and it's usually a 2-year delay, it can be anything. So they've tried to do their best to anticipate any of those code changes.
Mayor Barclay? Thank you. I was just wondering if there's ever any danger in a process like this, in the interests of earning a profit, whether corners would be cut anywhere? Like, what are the kind of the mitigation against that happening?
Right. I think, yeah, there's a potential of risk there, but because the team is invested in it, they can't cut a corner because they got everybody's eyes on it. So if they come back and say mechanical comes in and says, well, I got this furnace that's, super efficient, but nobody's heard of it, and the team will go back on them and they will keep them accountable, because if that fails and it doesn't work, they all end up paying. Because that's how the benefit of that whole process is, regarding the check and balances. I guess that's where that big check and balance is. Okay. I had another question in regards to the process and kind of the path forward. Say once we get the funding, say we get the grant or the money's in place, now what happens? So just to kind of, I put it in some words versus a chart. So once directed, the team will revalidate. So that'll take that 4 to 6 weeks. During that process, though, that's the opportunity to address any concerns council has, or the town has, or maybe even the team has in regards to some changes or anything like that in regards to the design. We request any changes, we look at any changes, we confirm the scope and we confirm the costs. And at that time, if we want to, have another visit somewhere, or if council's interested, I think that's our opportunity to go to Drayton Valley. Or if council's, wants to do that prior to. I think Drayton Valley is our biggest comparison. The risk with going to a building is they end up with something that it's like, well, ours doesn't include that. It's like, yeah, but that costs more money, and that costs more money, or we swap. There's always a risk with that, but this is our opportunity to do that, going, well, maybe we don't want ninja cross, we want a water slide, as an example. So, but there's the opportunity there. There's still a lot of opportunity for input into this design. From there, really, it goes into implementation of documents, approvals, and construction really can happen before the design's even done. Like, we have the team in place, we can start breaking ground halfway through detailed design. Detailed design's still plucking away. We haven't finalized costs for the HVAC or finalized those details. Site work's getting done, and we're hammering it out. That's the other benefit. Drayton Valley was very similar to that. Once they got going, it was, let's hammer this out and try and get that window tighter. So that's the costs, or the process itself. The big one, loss of parking. So I heard that a few times, loss of parking. So in the report, we did talk about that. So I looked at what the parking is available now. I think it was on 13 is the drawing. Might be even another page in. So existing, there's 171 stalls. That's formal stalls, so that's not including the gravel area, that's informal. 171 formal stalls that are painted. So in the report, we talked about repainting those stalls, taking away obviously for the aquatic center, adding a paved section of new formal stalls, and the number is 197. So we increased by 26 stalls, just by repainting. There's a section to the north of the curling rink, that's gravel right now. We looked at that section, I quickly looked at it and said, well, we could easily add informally another 20 stalls, just in that green space there alone. So there we're up to, 217 stalls.
Just
So that's,
question, so that 171 and the forecast 190, does that include all the stalls east of the curling rink?
yes.
Present, thank you.
Yeah, that's the full area within there. Where was my train of thought there? Existing pool has 28 stalls, formal stalls. So even without the additional 20, we're really at a net loss of 2 stalls for 2 facilities.
And I just wanted to point out, like, the existing stalls, on those big events that I've seen, you probably have 20 or more, and I would invite you to ask current arena staff that are all under the left-hand side of the aquatic center there right now, because they just park, they literally park till there's one last little lane to get
Yeah.
out. And it's amazing how many they jam in there. And are the new projected widths similar to, I used the analogy in my little submission to a Walmart, because I literally was at Walmart yesterday, and it seems like to our arena, we get a lot of big SUVs and pickups.
Yeah.
And if they're trying to park in those tight areas, they end up, there'll be 3 stalls used and then 1 that can't be used because 2 of them are encroaching in it. So
Yeah,
I just have to be careful to make sure you're getting what you think you're getting.
Yeah.
I saw that happen at the golf course too. They narrowed the stalls a couple of years ago, and quite often you can't get into one. And so then you're fooling yourself. And I'm not saying, I'm not challenging those, I'm just saying we need to make, I wouldn't count that you've got that many more. It sounds like it's better than I thought it was. And then the stalls that I'm seeing here, the new ones, what I've seen parked is right up to the baseball diamond, solid, and then all the way along the arena, and then a few down the middle. Again, that's on big events. Big events when we had them. And then there were people, both sides, out on 42nd.
42nd.
Yeah.
And that didn't include anything
Yeah.
on 42nd, the numbers there.
So it probably is doable,
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm hearing.
The other opportunity there is obviously, we've expanded the parking. Yeah, it's a little bit of a walk, but we did expand all that parking over by the playground. So formalizing that parking is gonna add a lot of parking to this area as well. Hopefully for other events that are happening coinciding, that's the ball. This is, more than this. But I think there's lots of opportunity there to definitely look at additional parking though, as this develops. I think there's great opportunity. Really, that's all I had up. Oh no, there was a couple more. One was in regards to the viewing. So, yeah, there was a comment in regards to the viewing area. We're reducing from 730 to 373. Again, great comment. We can definitely look at that. It's the configuration's different. So the viewing that we have in the existing aquatic center is more of a square looking. It's tighter, where this is laid out longer. But we can definitely look at that further. It's a great comment and an observation that we can get more into. The other comment is in regards to the spacing. We've had a couple comments in regards to the spacing from the the 2 doors that'll be still available to the new Aquatic Center. It's 6 feet right now. I'm pretty sure I read somewhere in there it was 8 feet, but I can't find it again, so I'm not gonna say that it's positive. I was reading a lot of stuff. But again, it can be reviewed at detailed design to go, is that adequate for, really, it's the kitchen, the concession area, is that adequate for getting crates going into that concession area? It is a locked area, it'll be gated. It's not meant to be a primary access for either one of those rooms, because both of those rooms have other accesses. So, but again, we can look at it. Do you have another?
And then, yeah, just picked up a couple other questions. So there was a question about aquatic center usage and the ability to identify usage by unique users. We don't have the ability to identify unique users. We take stats for each session, how many people go through, whether they use a membership, whether they use a punch pass, whether they pay. But because we don't set up accounts, people aren't scanning in with a card each time. We don't know individually how many different users that we do have. For example, I think Dawn gave me this. We're just, for the first 3 months of the year, we're just over 3,200 people coming in and out of the facility. For, that would be Aquafit, Lane Swim, or Public Swim. That wouldn't include the registered lessons. We do have our registered public lesson sets, as well as we provide daytime school lessons for John Wilson, St. Mark's, Penhold, Bowden, and Spruce View all come through the pool as well for their school lessons. Typically, their K to grade 5 or grade 6 is what utilizes the pool there. There was also a comment on the schedule adjustments and the Dolphin Swim Clubs. So typically, from September to March, there is public swimming in the evenings from 6 to 8:30. Once dolphins start for May, June, that gets shifted to 7 to 8:30. That allows the Dolphin Swim Club the 5 to 7 slot. Once we're into the summer months, there's also a 1 to 3 public swim, and then that 7 to 8:30 public swim. And based on feedback from the Aquatic Center staff, those summertime afternoon hours, we don't get the usage at public swim. People are doing other things. She'll get requests for afternoon. Somebody will say, you should have swimming lessons in the afternoons, and she always ends up canceling them because not enough people register, because no one wants to go at 2 o'clock on a July afternoon to go to swimming lessons inside. But that was those. So we can bring some other stats for usage if council would find benefit in that, but we don't really have the ability to identify sort of that non-repeat or that unique user on that.
So just a question, Director Kennedy or Jenkins, the spray park, will that stay? Like, what would happen if we went forward and we're not having a spray park at the new facility? So would we keep the existing one?
We'll have
Depending
to
on what goes on?
evaluate.
Yeah,
Again, we don't have the support
Yeah.
structures. It could stay. They'd have to reroute some of
okay.
the water and all of that, and there wouldn't necessarily be washroom access,
Yeah.
those types of things. And again, I guess the long-term future of the Aquatic Center and what it could potentially be used for is a discussion that will need to be had as well. We did pull some information too, just about the long-term. I feel like we've been asking Trish, what do we need to do in the next 3 years for the last 6 years? As to keep the current pool running, based on, we've had facility assessments, we've had folks from Chandos go through the project, and it's really tough to predict, because there are things we're not going to fix unless they're broken. But there's probably in that $1.9 to $2 million of work that could need to be done should things start to deteriorate. There's also some things that it may come a point where it doesn't make sense to fix. We have issues with the hot tub that they might not be worth it if this has been determined that it's gonna be built in 3 years. Well, we might go 18 months with no hot tub, you know, depending on what those costs are. But the longer we stretch it out, the more we're probably gonna have to look at things like, yeah, we are just gonna have to retile, or yes, we are just gonna have to, you know, redo the HVAC systems or those types of things just to keep the facility operational and doing what it needs to do.
Didn't we have a report, was it from Stephenson Engineering? Somebody at one point last term, and I think what was it, 2.3 million or something, just to try to keep the pool as is.
Yeah.
Keep it running.
Well, and that's, a lot of those things we still haven't necessarily done, because
Yeah.
it's like, well, is it gonna be 2 years, or is it?
Probably 4 million now.
Yeah, as you keep pushing them down the line. You know, we're in a similar situation right now with the roof conversation. To go, basically the input has been, well, don't put a brand new roof on it until you know what you're doing, because chances are most of those rooftop units aren't going to be required for whatever the long-term use is. So you're probably better to just keep working around what you have until you know what that is, so. So I think I got one.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we're definitely gonna get into funding right away. I had one last one, in regards to, Councillor Wing's question on additional lanes. Just my opinion, I think due to complexity of my understanding of how these basins are built, I think the probability of ever expanding 2 lanes would almost be impossible. Just because it's very complex how they gotta build these basins. So to be able to just shut it down and say, we're gonna add to it, I think would be very, very difficult. But good comment though, in regards to expansion. So just thought I'd add that one too, but we can pose that question. We can pose the question when it gets into detailed design, like what would it take to plan for, something like that? Nothing wrong with asking the question, so. Okay, we'll chat about funding. So Vanessa, if you wanna bring up my really fancy pie chart, because I've heard we need a pie chart, so.
Once we have a pie chart,
It's all clear what's a pie chart's there, Phil.
You should have seen the thing I provided to him. It was like 5 million letters or numbers.
Numbers. She gave me a spreadsheet and I thought this would be a little simpler. So if you notice, the colors are nice colors of everything, so. Yes. So this was kind of our kick at what do we think the numbers need to be to make this project work? And then also proposing a target date. So, you know, is it realistic? And that's for discussion. Is it realistic that we target August next year, 2024, to try and get funding? And really, what is the funding we need? It's provincial federal funding. That's the funding we need. I think once, after discussions with everybody, it's if we get that, we're confident we can make this, you know, project go. So this is our split. What we did is we said 10 million from the province, provincial, federal, gave some ideas for lobbying, FCM conference, Alberta Munis conference, you know, potentially Councillor Dunham's got some other ideas in there, so those are the others. We threw Red Deer County at $3 million. You know, is there an opportunity to really lobby them hard and get some commitment? Maybe that's not a one-time investment either. Maybe that's a 2-year commitment from them, potentially. And then ours commitment is $12 million. Erica can go through how we see we can achieve that in 3 years quite easily. And then as we slide down, sponsorship and fundraising, we set a target of $2.5 million. I think that's achievable. How can it be done? Yeah, definitely consult, we need a consultant. Like, that's probably a way bigger beast than what we have internally, but it could be a combination of a community group with a consultant to try and get that community involvement as well. So threw that out there. Separate grants, the $1 million, yeah, the CFIP grant, obviously, I think that comes into play once we get the provincial, kind of the green light go, we apply for that CFIP. The GHG grants, those really come into to play, I think, again, once we get the green light to go. Like, there's no point applying for the GHG grants if we don't really know the projects that go, because really they add just capital cost. Like, if we get something, great, we can evaluate it and really go once we know the projects that go. But ultimately, they do add capital cost to the project, so.
I was just gonna add on that sort of community group and the CFIP grant. We will need to figure out some community partners, because we can't apply for CFIP. We would need to be with someone else. Same, the co-ops, the UFAs, all of those have, 100,000, those types of grants, but we have to find someone else to apply along with us. And those ones, typically, you have to spend the money within 12 to 18 months. So you need to know that you're doing it before you can start submitting some of those smaller grants as well.
So I guess I can hand it over to Erica on the town costs.
Sure. So in any time that we've come before council today, we always indicate that we already do have $450,000 in the budget that is going to this reserve, that is going kind of earmarked to pay for this. So at the $12 million for the town costs, that's a total payment over 25 years of $832,000 a year. So if we take that and subtract the 450, we need an additional 381,000. And I've got it down to a 1.5 tax increase in 24, 25, and 26 to bring us up to that balance, right? Now, so we can fully fund the 12 million in the 3 years. However, all of those other little buckets of money, likely we won't have all of that money right off the bat, like the sponsorships and the fundraising. If we don't collect that at the beginning, when we get the provincial funding or the federal funding, then we're gonna go get our loan. We're gonna need to fund the whole project, which means we might need to actually fund 18 million, right? And then eventually pay it back, which may only be a year or two to pay it back. So I just did some estimates, right? If we have to fund 12 million, it's the 1.5% increase per year. If we need to fund 15 million on our own, it's 2.4 increase for the next 3 years. And if we have to fund the full 18, it'll be a 3.2% increase for 3 years, each year for 3 years, to build up the money in the budget just to make the payment. That would be on top of any other additional increases that we would need to do as an organization. So that's how we're funding. And again, we can't really do any of, like, we're not gonna go get a loan, we're not gonna do any of that until we get that large federal or provincial grant.
Erica, could you go back a bit and repeat those years and those increases per year? I think it's so relevant.
For all $3 amounts? So at the 12 million, if we only have to fund just what we say is in our pie chart, it would be a 1.5% increase in the years 24, 25, and 26. If we're able to somehow only have to fund 15 million, right? So which means maybe we have Redner County's money. Then we only have to do an increase of 2.4%, because now we have to build up a payment of 1.61 million, or sorry, 1.061 million. But if we have to fund all 18, that's 3.2% in the years 24, 25, and 26.
So I'm looking at a line now that says 1.75%.
So, yeah, sorry, Councillor Bates, I did pare that down to get down to the exact dollar amount that we need. That gave a little bit of cushion that would have gone into the reserve to build up the reserve by about 15,000 extra dollars in a year, so, or something like that, so.
I like contingency.
Yeah, this is just the exact dollar amount. I pared it down to as low as we can get it. Yeah, to 1.5, yeah.
And
That's the minimum we must do to build up that payment.
Are these calculations at today's interest rates?
They are, as of 10 minutes ago is when I re-pulled these numbers, so. Which they will change again in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years. Hopefully, they might go down, actually, so.
Because that's based on assessment, this year's assessment.
Well, it's based on the interest rate as of today, right?
So Director Kennedy, or maybe over to CEO Becker or whomever, like, with respect to the government funding, would it be realistic to, you know, let's take off the estimate for sponsorship and CFIP or whatever, then we have whatever, 25 million left, 24, and split that 3 ways between municipal, provincial, and federal? Is that realistic? We might, you know, we did have a discussion with Minister Schultz, and of course, you know, obviously not going to commit to anything, but, you know, she talked about, like, what does it look like, and kind of mentioned third, and, you know, what about some of this other stuff? Oh, yeah, and she seemed to be, well, you know, glad you're at least thinking about that, and our meeting last week, again, non-committal, but, you know, send us a business case and some numbers, and
Mayor Barclay, I have kind of go both sides to that question in response. One is all communities have aquatic centers, pools. There's other needs. It might be a tough sell to government. On the other side of that, my experience is there's a huge facility deficit, infrastructure deficit, and in all infrastructure, but these are key components of community, and Drayton Valley got funding, so why can't Innisfail with a strong proposal and being smart and have a real marketing component to a unique facility? It's not a pool, it is a wellness center or you know, whatever we want those words to be. So I kind of back and forth, but we do need aquatic centers and other recreation facilities, so I'd be leaning more on the stronger side that in due time, 2 years, ISIP potentially could be available.
well, I think to the, you know, the economic benefits, I know that she got a briefing paper about the economic benefits of this type of facility before she met with us, so, you know, obviously that's kind of where their head is thinking, as ours should be too. It is a huge attraction component for the community, so.
I guess, lastly, I guess I could just add into there, the other thing that we did take into consideration is the other two, we call 2 other projects, major projects that we believe is on council's radar. That's the Southwest Industrial, that's the $5.5 million, as well as then we have the solar farm potential as well, even though we haven't got the green light on that, but that's another $3.5 million. You know, I know that the question's been asked in the past from us is, can we afford to fund all these projects? So I know Erica's been looking at that, and again, concurrently, it looks like, yeah, it's doable. It's possible to do all 3 of these projects concurrently based on the strategy the finance directors put forward to fund them all. And then with the strategy, obviously with the solar farm being, that's revenue generating after 10 years. So.
I guess one concern I have is whatever project out there that we haven't even thought of yet. Obviously, as this council goes forward, there's going to be something else we hadn't, you know, those 2 big ones weren't on our radar 3 years ago. So there will be something else come along. And I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying you almost need a contingency, I think, in your other funding, because there's going to be something surprise you for considerable money. Always has been. And then you're pretty much maxed out. And those are pretty big tax increases. Yeah, it's a lot to digest all at once. even with a pie chart.
So what would be the step forward from here? Give this some consideration, and, I mean, eventually we have to get to a decision of whether we're go or stop, and if we stop, then what?
Yeah, that's it, Mayor Barclay, the council. It's, ultimately, we would like, if you agree with the validation report and, the pieces within that report, and you like location and what's this facility is representing, then we look for a formal approval of the validation report. If you're not certain, then certainly we need to hear that too. Just trying to frame this up a little bit in my head about, if it's 3 years away, we have an industrial park in development, and we have an anchor tenant moving in. You have 3, perhaps 4, well, I'll just say there's interested parties within that park, which is significant, which would certainly take the edges off the risk and the strain of financial investments in the Aquatic Center. So maybe it's really dive in. Do we really want to make this happen? Because I think if council really thinks we need to make this happen, then I think we can start over the next year. Maybe not sponsorship so much, because I think the detailed design is the piece which really going to demonstrate the doors in the facility. Right now, we don't see the doors because you sell everything in the facility. You sell the big facility, you sell the 2 arenas, you sell, each dressing room door, whatever you can sell, you sell it through the market. I don't think we have enough detail to really take to a sponsorship program and say, let's sell all components of this facility.
That has to be a part of the bigger fund development
Yeah.
program, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. We definitely don't have enough information.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, and part of the detail, you could potentially have, your video, like, going through the facility. That's what we kind of talked about. That's part of the deliverable. So then you take it to your consultant could get out to the market and start selling these doors. Yeah, I don't know, or the other side is, no, this is too much to handle. Let's just pause this and reflect on this. So it's really up to you, but we have a lot of things in the fire right now that they are gonna either really grab on and let's go, or they're just gonna, okay, let's go, what else? But those are my general thoughts.
Councillor Bates?
Well, and an hour ago wasn't loaded up with all this information. Obviously, I don't think I'm prepared to make that decision that quick. And I mean, even when we talk about potential in the industrial park, it wasn't that long ago, I remember saying, gee, we might have to have more industrial land, and so then that would add to the needs for the future, and how quick could that be projected to happen. And so there's a lot of salad here in this to sift through. And are those the only two projects? Even if there's some other smaller ones, $1 million here and $1 million there, they add up. If there's something else that isn't on the table here. Yeah, so just like, I'm not prepared to say, yeah, let's go today with that.
So, CO Becker, sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead, Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just a general question. At what point do we feel we have enough information to make a decision? I feel like we can't predict the future in terms of what we might possibly need, and those things are going to come or they're not going to come. I don't know that we can let that hold us back from making a decision about this facility. And we can't go ahead and do anything in terms of funding until we've made a decision. So at what point do we make a decision?
No, but thank you for that, kind of along the lines of what I was going to say. When you feel you need to bring this back to council, but we're going to go around the table and we'll ask what people want to do, and I will say I want to go ahead with this. We've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm so confident in what's taking place in this community right now and the future, and so much positivity, and we need this. Like, we need a new facility at some point. So do we spend another 4 or 5 years talking about it? In my opinion, we can't. So I'm going to say, yes, I would like to go ahead, and we can just go start at whatever end that we want to start at. And Councillor, okay, who's first? Who's first?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'm in support of, I'm prepared to make a decision today to go forward. I know that there are things that we can't predict. We don't have solutions for. We don't know if they're going to come our way. We can, I would also like to express my support for moving forward now.
I'm still reluctant at this point without a little more refining of some of the other big projects we might see. I'd like, what if we have to buy some other industrial land? And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be prepared to make that decision in a couple of weeks if we, are those things, what other potentials do we have? I see 2 projects here, and which I was aware of both. The Southwest Industrial Park, that's committed. We're digging, it's done. The solar farm is potential. Not sure what else could be out there. And, I'm looking at 3 lines here somewhere between 1.5%, I guess, is it not 1.75 and 3.2% tax increases for the next 3 years. Those are big commitments. And you got to do that if you're going to buy something. I don't expect this thing to happen. Oh, I'd like to also take this opportunity too, because there was an interesting, the way it came out in the paper when we did discuss this before, when I think I was quoted as saying tax increases weren't going to do it. I fully realize that whatever we do, everything that isn't a grant is going to be a tax increase, amortized over some period of time and put against some borrowing or whatever. I fully understand that, so that was not exactly what I meant. But I'm a little concerned about saying go today. That's just me.
Okay, thank you. Next, Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I do support moving forward with this because I don't think anything that we have in this report will change significantly, that we just can't keep this machine moving forward. However, just a couple of comments. I don't want us to, don't overthink what you need regarding fundraising. So don't do a bunch of work or think you need to do a bunch of work and then bring in a consultant to say, now tell us what we need to do the work. Hire somebody before, have that conversation. I don't think $2.5 million is actually that much money. And so if we look at a fundraising target with the goal of dropping that 12 million percentage, or the 12 million commitment of the town, I think that until we get that feasibility work done by a consultant, we shouldn't get stuck on that piece of it. I think that number fundraising can go up. The business case to government will be important too, and I think we need to get started on that. Let's not forget Bowden and Penhold somewhere in that business case, as far as saying, yeah, we want to ask Red Deer County for money. This is the only pool between Olds and Red Deer for municipalities as well as rural folks. So I just don't want to lose that thought. And then, I just think I would hate it if we just said, let's just pause for now and think about it some more. Let's just keep going, please.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. And I go back to an expression that I've used in my previous life, when we had to make big decisions around airstrips and tanker bases and that kind of thing. And we had those discussions, exactly what we're going through here with our directors, and it always came out, the Lord hates a coward. I think we need to take this step, and it's a big step. It's a big step. I agree with Councillor Bates. It's a lot of money. We don't know what's coming down the tubes. But if we don't take that step, we're going to analyze this thing to death. We can find a million excuses, million points in here that, oh, well, maybe we do this, maybe we do that. And we're not going to move on it. So I guess with that, without any further ado, I would say that, and I fully support starting the discussions to move ahead, whatever that looks like. I really like to talk about, discussions, having fireside chats with the mayors of the counties, or other people, just putting out some trial balloons just to see what's out there to, is there an appetite for this? But I think if we don't move on this, that the October date is looming, and that's going to come by pretty quick. We're going into a summer holiday, not going to be people around. And now a reevaluation in October, God knows what, inflation's going to be. It could be 32 million, and then we have the same discussion in November. As far as the other two large projects, we have, another 2.5 years in our term, and we've bit off a lot, and I think we look at the resources that administration has or may not have. I think we got a lot going on, and I don't want to be pragmatic, but I think maybe it's time that we take a sort of a deep breath and say, hey, what else, and what else can we handle over the next 2.5 years? This here is going to take up a lot of time of this group over here and our CAO. So I'll sum that up by saying I fully support moving ahead as soon as possible. Thank you.
Did you bring the moose? Did you bring the moose?
The moose is here.
Okay, all right, just checking. Okay.
It's more than a moose on the table.
Okay, all right,
Here's the good moose.
okay,
In 3 years we'll have it.
okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Tax increases scare everyone, administration, council, taxpayers. But if we keep kicking the can down the road, at what point is it out of the town's capacity to ever do anything? And I think that if we don't do it now, that's gonna come into sight. We know that we have huge support within the community for this. I see the numbers. As Councillor Wing said, I think $2.5 million for sponsorship and funding is not out of the realm of possibility, if more. And with the conversations we had with Minister Schultz, not knowing the future with that, I think we can leverage our relationships that we have currently and going forward to try and get more funding out of them to lessen the burden on the town. I fully support going forward. I think it's within this administration's capacity to make this happen in a time frame that will please everybody. Other than that, I think my colleagues have said everything else that needs to be said at this point in time, so.
Okay, thank you. CEO Becker?
So I guess looking at the pie charts, so do these numbers fit for you? Do you want to make those adjustments now, or do you want to come back to you in a couple of weeks? Probably a week to 3 weeks, probably 3 weeks. One thing though that comes to mind is, you could, in my own opinion, you could use your 1 point, was it 1.5, 1.5? Yeah. 1.5%. So yeah, you could go, is it wrong to go 1.5% as a target, and that's what you're building on? And then in 3 years, we may have other things occurring that say, no, we have big risk in our community, we need to delay this project. Or we have seen significant growth in our community, residential and industrial. We're confident we have assessment growth, we can maintain that 1.5%. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you decide to go today, it's not saying you can't change your mind, like based on circumstances at that given time. Well, the thing of risk is the validation report, but that can be updated with a team. We will lose a team in three years.
I would like to see the provincial federal amount upped a little bit, if, I mean, just as a target, you know, where it's third. Whether that's realistic or not, we will see, but I think you're right, CO Becker, around that, you know, wellness theme, and, you know, tie that into prevention, health prevention, and saves money in the long run, so. And economic attraction as well. I remember, you know, one of the business visits we did, there was somebody we spoke to who said, Innisfail needs to do this. And because the community needs it. I also think if we, you know, if we need more industrial land, that means we've sold out the industrial park, and that's going to make a huge difference to revenue generation. And the solar project's going to make a difference to revenue generation. So housing, like so many things that are on the go right now, and I don't know about the fundraising and the CFIPs and all that. I mean, that's I guess but whatever you think, whatever council thinks. I'd like to see the orange pie a little bit bigger, but that's just saying. I didn't say the name, I said the orange color.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. I think that number, our lack of data is concerning to me, and I wonder if there's not a way that we can, similar to what the library's been doing with their surveying library members, like 9,000 people is a lot in 90 days, or 3,200 is a lot in 90 days, it's 35 a day. Could we target those 35 people to get some information so that we know?
We do ask whenever anybody pays.
Whether-
Dawn says she thinks it skews a bit because people think they're gonna get charged more if they say they're not from town, but,
Yeah.
but I do have,
But,
like,
okay.
similar to the library, we do know where our users come. Anyone who signs up for swimming lessons, we can easily
Sure.
track those accounts. We do see typically across the board, it's sort of somewhere between 80-20 and 70-30 is what we see, whether it's library programs, registered programs, drop-in stuff, it tends to be about that with the county.
Is there anything else from administration? Good. Council, is there anything else right now? So you can expect in 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time? Yeah, I figured we'll come back to you formally with a regular council meeting, asking you to consider approving the validation report. So that's your guiding document. And again, design stuff, it'll come once you get the money and start working on the detailed design. That's where you get into the what's the rooms, what's the walls, what's the benches, all the detail. It starts to flush out. Same time, I know the advocacy and your intergovernmental strategy is part of this. So certainly that's on me to start building to get it going for you to start molding what that looks like. I think it's good.
Okay, as Jerry Maguire would say, show me the money. Help me help you. All right, sounds good. Thanks for all your work, Director Kennedy and Jenkins and the team. Appreciate all this. So we'll move into 4.1 correspondence. So we've got the open house next Tuesday, is that correct? I believe. Yes. I'm already getting messages, thank you. Yeah, it was, yeah. 4:30 to 6:30. just have somebody make a motion, please, to accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates and Dunham. All in favor? Okay, and we'll do roundtable discussion with Councillor Dunham, please.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just want to say thank you to my fellow council members and mayor for covering me in my absence last Monday. I do appreciate it, and I did appreciate the time off. So last week, I had the pleasure of attending the EDA conference in Kananaskis, and to say that it was full of information would be a slight understatement. I'm still transcribing and distilling down all the notes that I took, and we'll be going through a number of the sessions that they're posting online here in the coming days. I don't want to get too much into it because there's just a wealth of information, but I just kind of want to run through what our schedule was and to give you some ideas of what the sessions were that we attended. So on Wednesday, I attended 2 pre-sessions, the Prairies Can Town Hall, and as well as a mentorship matching session, which I found very interesting. I was neither going to be a mentor nor a mentee, but just to find out some information on if we do end up with an EDO at some point in time, the opportunities that there are within Alberta and the communities for them to either become a mentor or a mentee, and their wonderful, wonderful knowledge out there. On the afternoon, there was an agriculture and agri-food session, one on energy, life science, health and biotech, technology and digital transformation, manufacturing, transportation and logistics, and then the visitor economy. On Thursday, I attended a brilliant one called The Future of Food, which spoke a lot to agri-tech between the farm gate and then food tech, and some interesting statistics that food contributes $90.3 billion to our economy and employs 1.8 million people. I attended another one called How to Attract Big Talent to Smaller Communities by Promoting Quality of Life. So much as we were just discussing with the new Aquatic Center, some of the statistics is why people relocate, and better quality of life amenities is 48%, closer to family 31%, cost of living is 25%, and one of the things that they really underline that by attracting talent, you also attract businesses, and if you have the talent, then it's easier to attract businesses. If big businesses see that there isn't that capacity in the town or the municipality, they're not gonna come. One other big thing was affordability. And, you know, we often speak about the affordability of Innisfail through our housing costs, but what they put to us is look at it over a 3 to 5 year span. Don't just say houses are cheaper in Innisfail by X amount of dollars, utilities are that much cheaper. Actually show people what they would save over several years. So if your housing cost is, you know, a quarter of what you're paying in Toronto and your utilities are this, your savings over 3 to 5 years are going to be in the hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that translates to earlier retirement and better quality of life, which is really important. Another one that I attended, which I'm definitely going to be sharing more information on, is capital raising alternatives for project funding, and the theme of it was new developments and project funding by raising capital from local investors and residents. On Friday, there was global investment trends and opportunities, and then we had Justin Reimer, who is the CEO of the ERWA, which is the Emissions Reductions Alberta, called Alberta's Net Zero Advantage, and it spoke to the complexities of Alberta's transition to cleaner energy while supporting economic growth, and although currently the substantial progress that we've already been made in the last several years. Another one was building sustainable relationships and community economic development planning through CD partnerships. And then finally, we had Todd Hirsch, who is the former VP and chief economist at ATB, called Bracing for Turbulence, Alberta's Economy 2023. But the one thing that they really, in everything that we attended, spoke about is the energy transition in Alberta and how it's already moving forward, and much to the narrative of some people in this province, it's already happening, and we are making huge strides, and the fact that it's in the tens of trillions of dollars that we stand as a province to make from not waiting on this, I think is the most important thing that I took away from it, and as much. There was another very interesting thing that they were able to share with us, and I'll let Mayor Barclay speak to that Justin Reimer shared with the crowd there, and I think it was a very, very important thing for Innisfail, but that was my week.
You forgot the skiing. Okay, Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I attended two sessions last week. One was with MLACC, talking about what the NDP might be able to do for us. He was pretty non-committal. He did a lot of listening, but I thought it was a good discussion. Sort of unfortunate at the end of the presentation, one thing when it comes to ministers, MLAs, and MPs, their time is so regulated that when an EA says you got about 30 seconds, you have 30 seconds. So, and I think that's what happened. We sort of went over our time, and he probably had other meetings, and she just pulled the plug. So I never got an opportunity to say, but that's fine. There will be other times. The second thing that that morning I attended a housing needs assessment, which I found quite interesting. So I think that's moving forth. So that's about all I did last week, and I think this week there's a couple more meetings that are going to be coming up. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. And Councillor Wing.
Thank you. I also participated in the housing assessment last Tuesday. It was very interesting, and I enjoyed our meeting with the Municipal Affairs Critic as well. Again, it's all very interesting stuff and interesting times. Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors had their monthly meeting last Wednesday evening. This week brings our meeting with Minister Copping. MPC meets tomorrow, as does the Municipal Development Plan Advisory Committee. Parkland Library Executive Committee meets Thursday, and Community Awards are Friday night. And I'm very interested to see the cement blocks in the Centennial Park parking lot, so I'm very hopeful that will help with that situation. And so thank you for addressing that.
Thank you. And Councillor Bates.
Gets a bit repetitive. The housing engagement was very interesting, and the Municipal Affairs Critic. I also did the 2 meetings with the Mountain View Water Commission, the AGM, and the regular meeting. One of the things that I'll try and get out to the CAO is a summary that the chair made of all of the accomplishments from last year, that I think if we could separate that out and maybe send it to council. It'll come as part of, so I don't know if we could get someone to maybe try to electronically pull that out and scan it and cut and paste, whatever. Coming out of that meeting, I'm also going to have the opportunity to tag along for one day to the hydrogen conference at the end of the month in Edmonton, and it happens to be the 25th, so hopefully I'll get back in time for part of the Southwest Housing Open House. And this week, tomorrow, I've got the trifecta of the health engagement, MPC, and MDP. And Wednesday, the biannual meeting of the Central Alberta Waste Management Commission, which is monitoring the Pine Lake landfill that 5 or so of us put stuff into 10 years ago. And the Community Awards presentation on Friday.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Now I'm really repeating. So last week was the housing assessment workshop, which I enjoyed, and I love the statement that they made in there. I don't think I've got it written down, something about remembering that housing is not only a commodity but a human right. And the meeting with MLACC, and we've got a couple more meetings this week, and MPC, and thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so like everybody else, was with meeting with the Municipal Affairs Critic, and as well, thanks to administration for allowing us to partake in the housing assessment discussion. I think that's really good, and thanks for reaching out to the community the way you are with that and getting that feedback. As Councillor Dunham said, mentioned, we were at EDA last week, Wednesday through Friday. There's close to 500 delegates that go there, so municipal officials, economic developers, and other industry people. Not going to go repeat what we've already heard, but some of the breakout sessions I went to, attended our Energy Future, and that was a panel with ATCO, Alberta Energy Efficiency Alliance, ASO, so the Alberta Energy System Operator. They were talking about forecasting and analytics, as well as Ascent Energy Partners. How to attract big talent to smaller communities. You know, as Councillor Dunham said, that was all kind of wrapped around quality of life and people leaving, you know, their existing places because they want to find a better quality of life, lower their cost of living, access to larger living space, and access to open space and less congestion. Flexible work arrangements were a big part of what he spoke about, and as well as I saw him last year at EDA as well, and you know, really around kind of that economic development website and the attraction that that's where site selectors are going. So the first thing they see, and he's brilliant at it. So I will pass that name on to CEO Becker. Over lunch, we heard about how to leverage trade commission services for foreign direct investment, particularly from the U.S. focus. Went to another breakout session, Innovative Real Estate Solutions. Drumheller was part of that session, giving a presentation on trying to attract developers and builders. Sounded very familiar to Innisfail, and you know, having some of the same issues, to be honest with you. Had a private meeting with J.P. Giroux, who was an acquaintance of Councillor Messaros. Councillor Messaros brought him into council a little while ago. Excellence in Manufacturing Consortium took that opportunity to introduce the new ED with CAPE to JP. So that was a great meeting, and really looking forward at some further conversations with him and the organization for the manufacturing industry here in town. Then, of course, Lynette Tremblay with Invest Alberta talked about the global investment trends, and then Justin Reimer with ERA, when he did his presentation, which was about, 45 minutes, I guess, he did mention the Biltons and the hydrogen locomotives. So, talking about what a huge, once-in-a-generation opportunity this is. Here in Innisfail, CP has 30,000 locomotives that to retrofit, so when that is just the start. So had the opportunity to meet him after. So I would say from that conference, I came away with 5 very solid contacts through meetings after their presentations. Spoke with CEO Becker about that today and kind of moving forward on some of those things. And as I sat there for a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, I think what kept coming to mind, as Councillor Dunham said, like the opportunity that's at the forefront, right at our feet here in Alberta, that we can be the people that deliver global solutions, like not just Alberta or Canadian solutions, but global solutions, because we have everything we need from agribusiness knowledge to life sciences and biotech and AI and on and on and on, and what's happening in the energy industry and the transition. CCS was a big part of it, Justin's presentation as well, and the opportunities for manufacturers in Alberta to be manufacturing the parts that's required for CCS, shipping that overseas. So much opportunity, and I think what comes to mind is I'm hoping that this province has the same mindset. I'm not going to get political here, but it concerns me sometimes about kind of that rhetoric we see out there, and comparing that to really what's going on behind the scenes and the opportunity we have. And there was an article in the Calgary Herald today by Adam Sweet. Adam is the director for Western Canada for Clean Prosperity, and he was the founding VP of Policy and Bylaw for the UCP Board of Directors, also a spokesperson for the Canadian Environment Minister under the Harper government. And his quote is, he wrote a whole article about things like contract for differences and what a huge opportunity that is. And he said that we can take steps that will attract billions of dollars in new clean energy innovation and thousands of jobs, or we can sit back and let the world pass us by. And the choice is really simple. We either do this or we don't do it. So I think that really summarized how I kind of felt listening to that. And you see so much potential. And, you know, I also, as I was sitting there, I also think of really what's taking place in Innisfail. And, you know, listening to, I met a Fortis representative, Kayla was there, and she introduced me to somebody, and, you know, the innovation that's taking place in the industrial park and the work that administration is doing on that. And, you know, the vision kind of got off the ground with a solar project a few years ago with Elemental and Biltons, and the work that's going on in facilities here in energy efficiency, and on and on and on. And I think we're getting a lot of attention out there, without question. And so I just want to thank everybody for having such great vision and leadership. Pharma, of course, came up in the conversation with Justin Reimer as well. And I will let you know that there has been a meeting booked with the Mayor of Calgary over that discussion coming up in May. So other than that, have the meeting, of course, with Minister Copping tomorrow. Looking forward to that, and some other things happening this week. But yeah, all in all, I'm feeling very energized and positive, and looking forward to connecting into the community with some of the people I met at EDA. So thank you. Anybody else have anything further? No?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone noticed the green elevator there, so that's,
I took a picture, yeah.
so that was, the artist is Stephen Vincent from our Parks Department. He's the one that did the truck, so I think it looked fantastic.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah, I took a picture of it, so, yeah, looks great.
This corner doesn't know where it is.
It's down at the, across from the A&W. In the green area, there's a new elevator sitting there. Yep, seed cleaning plant, 1958, yep, yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. So, nothing further, we'll have a motion to adjourn then, please.
Mayor Barclay, I would make that motion.
Okay, thank you, all in favor?